The most basic principle in strength training is progressive overload, continually increasing the demand on the body on average over time, forcing it to adapt to manage greater demands. This is only possible because by nature the body overcompensates in its adaptation to a stimulus, assuming adequate time and resources to recover. That is, if we lift 100 kilos, the body will respond to that stimulus by preparing to lift more than 100 kilos. That allows us to lift a little more next time, which in turn creates another margin of adaptation, and we continue repeating that process. Subjecting the body to identical demands in terms of intensity, volume, and type will eventually result in zero adaptation. The stimulus-response adaptation curve shows the basic process that occurs when we train. We introduce a stimulus in the gym, the body responds with fatigue and initiates the recovery process, then it adapts to establish a new level of ability specific to that stimulus. So there are three basic scenarios. First, we get everything right and the body is able to adapt how and when we want, and we can then repeat this week after week, continually improving ability over the long term. Two, our ratio of training to recovery is too high, so the body doesn't have time to respond adequately to the stimulus to improve ability before the next dose that creates fatigue, which then sets it farther back and actually creates regression. Training creates both stimulus and fatigue. When the adaptation to the stimulus is completed and the fatigue is cleared, the body is in a condition to perform better than it could before. But while under lingering fatigue, performance is diminished, meaning the body won't be capable of more demanding training to produce a greater adaptation built on the previous. The third scenario is that our ratio of training to recovery is too low, so the next stimulus occurs after the body has lost the temporarily elevated ability and returned to baseline, or potentially even below. If we wait too long after the adaptation has occurred and fatigue has cleared, the increased ability resulting from the previous stimulus will fade, and we're starting from the same baseline as the last dose, meaning the next dose of stimulus is just repeating the process rather than building on it. And if this period is long enough, the body's condition will even drop below that previous baseline, meaning we're actually starting from a lower level of ability and likely not even capable of the prescribed increases in work because of that deconditioning. So why don't we just introduce a massive training dose and wait longer to recover? In short, because basic traits like strength and power are only part of the equation. We have to keep skill development and maintenance in mind as well, not to mention the mental side of things like confidence, both of which suffer with excessively long breaks between training sessions. So even if training once every 7 to 10 days with massive intensity and volume would produce better strength and power increases, those improvements would be negated by the diminishment of the other elements necessary for effective snatches and clean and jerks. So the goal for a microcycle is pretty straightforward. We want to dose training and recovery optimally to create the greatest possible adaptation in that time period to elevate the body's condition in time for the next and increased stimulus. In other words, we want to find the ideal mix of intensity, reps, volume, and frequency to induce the body to develop the traits we want in response, balanced with enough recovery for the body to adapt and be capable of applying that elevated ability to a higher level of training. We then string together a series of properly dosed microcycles into a mesocycle that as its own unit increases the athlete's baseline ability. Then connect a series of mesocycles into a macrocycle that progressively improves ability and increasingly focuses it specifically on the competition lifts to produce a new peak ability and performance when we need it.